Hello, welcome to Midweek. My name is Michelle Wingle, and my soul's purpose is to move the planet forward, healing myself and others emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And today I'm going to talk about love over fear, or love or fear, or choosing love and not fear. And so I'm doing an experiment today because as I looked at this within myself, I decided I was going to play a Brene Brown. And Brene Brown says that the first TED Talk she did was unlike any other talk she'd ever given. She decided she was going to perform an experiment and be vulnerable. And I've always admired her for that, and I'm going to take her advice today and be vulnerable. I'm going to choose love over fear and present myself in the true of who I am. So here we go. And learn to love myself anyway. It can be said that all emotions can be filtered down to either love or fear. And Psychology Today says there are only two primal emotions in the human being, love and fear, and we cannot feel both at once. In the same way that light removes darkness, love can remove fear. And it goes on to say in the same article, love over fear is a choice every time. So how does that look though in the real world, in everyday life? Because sometimes it's hard when we talk about love over fear because it kind of makes us the love the hero and the fear like the enemy, or it's kind of brings us a little bit of shame, or the idea that we are never supposed to feel fear which is impossible, or that when we do feel fear, we are doing something wrong. Today, I want to break down the concept of love versus fear in three parts. So first, we need to understand the mental body and the emotional body. The mental body is the part of us that thinks. It's different than the brain, although the brain is the center or the anchor of the mental body. The brain itself sends signals to the rest of the body that are not thoughts. So that's different. This is the function of the brain that is the physical body, not the mental body. As far as the thinking part of the brain, it is divided into two kinds of thinking. One side thinks linearly and the other side like expansively. And we usually associate this to the left side, the linear and formulaic or analytical, and the right side that is expansive or creative or visionary. And fear is a product of thinking. So the response happens in the amygdala part of the brain. And the amygdala looks like two little almonds, and there's one on each side. And when the right side amygdala is stimulated, a fear response arises. And I imagine that fear is expansive and unsuppressed. And in the right side of the mind, on the left side of the mind, they believe that the amygdala contributes to the brain's reward system. And that is why fear is so powerful. We can get a reward response to our fear. And that makes sense because when we followed that fear and survived, because of our fear, because we followed that fear and survived, we got a big reward. We stayed alive. So fear is an important function of the mental body. It has purpose. Each of the four bodies, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, without the support of the other bodies, they can run into extremes. So the mental body is the same way, and we need balance between these four bodies. For example, even in the spiritual body, which we'd think that would just be, if we could just be spiritual all the time. But the spiritual body, it has no limits and no boundaries, and it doesn't have any fear, and it is connecting and full of love, and that sounds fabulous. But if we were to stay in that space only, then we run the risk of not caring about everyday duties or important things that, say, the mind is spectacular at. So we do need a balance of these things. And fear gets tricky because often it's associated with a trauma response. And so checking out for just a minute, a little side note, trauma is different. Having a traumatic experience isn't the same as trauma. Trauma is the experience. Trauma is the body's response to fear, either real or imagined. and it can get stuck. This fear needs healing, and that's most of the work that I do is healing trauma. So if that's something that is calling to you, go to my website. I do virtual sessions, and we need to heal that trauma. Healing trauma is vital to the ability to choose love over fear. So if this is difficult for you, there's a possibility that there's trauma involved. So that's the mental body. The emotional body feels like really childlike to me when I connect to it. It's very innocent. And when emotions are separated from thoughts, they seem to be just so pure. And it's childlike because it also, the emotions need a buddy at all times. In order to really understand our emotions, we need to understand the thoughts that created them, or we experience them as the physical sensations in the body. So it always needs some kind of a little bit of tandem with another body to really experience. And I'm still on a mission to really understand the emotional body all by itself. Love is the emotion that hints at the soul of the emotional body, because when we are in a state of love, this is my theory, we are not thinking really thoughts, we're not coming up with evidences, and we are just fully experiencing. So that the mental body or the emotional body is just at work 100%. So I know there's a piece of us that is just this emotional body. And all the emotions are important to the emotional body. And as babies, we were feeling emotions long before a thought process were happening. And as a child, we were soon taught that emotions were unacceptable or acceptable. As a society, we have really undervalued the emotional body. And I talk about that a lot on my talk. You can find it on YouTube under the Wholeness Network. So fear and love are simply the responsibilities of two different bodies. All of that's what we're getting to. So choosing one over the other is really, we need that understanding of the function of the mental body and the function of the emotional body. When we understand that choosing love over fear becomes, a little clearer when we can make that distinction. The second aspect of understanding how to choose love over fear is to understand that love transforms, fear depletes. They have two different experiences. When we love someone and they die, for example, our love doesn't die. It doesn't go away. It transforms maybe into something new. And fear, when we look back at the past of what really scared us, we don't get that initial fear response. It kind of dissipates. It's not as scary as time goes by, so it kind of just goes away. So, and also remember that trauma is different. So we may remember something and have a big response, and that's possibly trauma. So that's one way to know the difference between fear and trauma, is that fear, we get a new perspective. Trauma does not. We still have response. So the idea that fear, needs a scoot, needs to go away, and love is the answer gets a little complicated when we bring dislike into the equation. I was thinking out loud the other day, if I don't like something, does that mean I'm afraid of it? Does that dislike equal fear? If I just don't want to go there, am I holding fear? So, when I really thought about it, here was an answer I came up with. Fear looks for evidence and proof, which is a mental function, and love doesn't need proof. It's non-mental. So if I don't like something, it is because maybe I love something else. That is different than fear. As soon as I start to come up with reasons why I don't want to go there, why I don't like it, if I'm like, well, there's this and that, and I'm just going off on my thoughts, or just going like a little crazy, coming up with evidences, I'm in fear. If I like vanilla ice cream, it's not that I am in fear of chocolate. I just love this and not that. So there's the difference. And we really need to use all four bodies to identify when we are in fear and when we are in trauma. And when we are in love. The sensations of the body are vital. They are communicating the information, those sensations. And we've really done a good job at numbing and and changing our and suppressing those sensations in the body. So we really need to, that's kind of step one, is getting familiar with the communications of the body. Love and fear feel different in the body. Love connects us and fear separates, which is a function of the spiritual body. Fear thinks and love feels, and all four bodies working together is key. A scientific study in 1972 concluded that all organisms, even single-cell organisms, must have the capacity to detect and respond to significant stimuli in order to survive. So bacteria, for example, they approach nutrients and avoid harmful chemicals. So even a one-cell organism understands moving towards, which is love, and pulling away from, which is fear. Love transforms and fear depletes. The third understanding of love over fear is that it takes love to overcome fear. Love is more than a feeling, it is a power. And personally, when I hear about the dark energy that we haven't figured out yet, this force that seems to hold things together, but we cannot yet detect it, I think that energy is love. I think love is woven in the fabric of the universe. And sometimes, most of the time, we need love from another to be able to transform fear. You know, I'm trained in all sorts of modalities, but when I need some healing, I need someone to be there. I know the words they're going to say. I know where they're going to put their hands and how they're going to support me. I know all that. I could do that myself, but there's something about someone being there with me, maybe as a witness. I don't know, but maybe it's because they can hold that place of love, and that my own fear won't allow me to. And there are times when we must hold that place of love for another, and there are times when we need to reach out and receive love. So choosing love, we need a practice. It's calling out for a practice. So make love a spiritual practice, a mental practice, an emotional practice, and practice connecting to the feelings or sensations of love in the body. This week's music is a love song playlist. I'll put it in the comments below, a link to it, but use this and think about how it feels in the body. Think about what thoughts come up. Think about the emotions that it invokes. Think about who it connects you with as you listen to this playlist of love songs. So we'll see you next time. January, I'm going to do a whole month of weight loss and physical body. So make sure you tune in then. I'll start to advertise for that a little bit, but that's my goal, is to really take January and really break down what's going on in the emotional body, mental body, physical body, and spiritual body when it comes to weight loss. It's revolutionary. So we'll see you then. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.